everyone. Good morning. I think we are going to get started. My name is Rachael Roberts, and I'm returning to Eastman after a couple, almost 2-decade hiatus. I was here as a student, flutist, and have come back as the Associate Professor of Music Leadership, as well as a graduate degree program director, teaching and running Eastman's new Master of Arts in Music Leadership. Before I came here, I lived and worked in Boston, Massachusetts for 9 years. And what leads me to this topic today is the work that I did the last 2 years that I was in Boston. The mayor, Marty Walsh, had started an initiative to eliminate the gender wage gap by the year 2020, which is next year now. Part of doing that, he had 3 different ways that he would approach that. The third way is to lead free salary negotiation workshops across the city for all women, specifically targeted to women, although it was open to men and women. So I attended one of these. I thought the information was fantastic, and I signed up to become a facilitator, and I facilitated the full 2-hour salary negotiation workshop over 32 times and trained over 850 women across the city of Boston. Not only skills and strategies for how to negotiate for themselves, but how to also develop the language and capacities to be advocates for equal pay and gender equity. This is not a 2-hour session, it's a 20-minute session today. So I will do my best to give you some of the pieces that were most resonant towards me, especially as I applied it to students while I was working at NEC and students, young professionals in the music career and the music business in particular. Today we are covering 4 different categories in the next 20 minutes. The first being building your own advocacy skills and the language around why this matters. A few negotiation tips and strategies for you that I think apply to anything, not just salary negotiations. Next steps and continued learning resources. And then the last piece, hopefully with any luck, we'll have a few minutes for a really fast Q&A for the questions that you have. So let's first begin with the advocacy skills. Setting the context for why negotiation matters, and specifically the gender wage gap. So can anyone explain to me what is the gender wage gap? Yes.
Men will often earn more than women for the same job?
Yes. Great. So it's described as the difference in earnings between what a woman makes and what a man makes. That's what the gender wage gap is. And in 2017, these numbers and figures that I'm using today are pulled from AAUW, which is American Association of University Women. They are doing a tremendous amount of research on what is current in the US today, but that's where all of these numbers come from. Their 2017 earnings ratio is that women, on average, across the US earn just shy of $42,000. Men, on the other hand, earned on average just over $52,000. So if you take that difference and do the math, that's an 80% difference. Women are earning 80% of what men are, and that's only on average. The other piece is breaking it down by demographics of women as well, and that's what all of these pie charts represent. I'll go through them quickly. But for Hispanic or Latino women, they only earn 53% of what an average white male salary is. Black or African American women earn 61% of that same total. White women, 77%. Asian women, 85%. American Indian or Alaska Native, 58%. And the last category, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, they earn 62% on average of what men make in this country. Any way that you look at it, women are underrepresented in that category. And it also affects other groups, mothers, LGBTQ, any type of demographic. The equality is not there, even though there are steps moving towards that. My question to you is, why do you think this pay gap exists? Dead silence. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I think often women are not trained to speak up for themselves, or they're kind of inclined to not ruffle feathers and not make a disturbance about something. They just tend to go along with what is said. And
Exactly.
men are often raised to be more assertive and speak up for themselves more.
There's many different factors to it, but the big one, and why the mayor of Boston started having these salary negotiation workshops for free for anyone, especially women, is because women just don't ask. For whatever societal norms, the way that we are raised, whatever it may be, women are just taught not to ask and not to stand up for themselves. So that's where these negotiation workshops come in. There's many ways that this plays out. Women are often overrepresented in lower paid jobs and underrepresented in higher paid jobs as well. Women are discriminated against often because they are caregivers, whether caring for their parents, caring for children, or even having the ability to have children. That's an impact on how many women are viewed. Based on this gender wage gap, over a 40-year career, white women stand to lose, on average, $480,000 over the course of their career. And the numbers keep going up. So African American women, based on where the trend is right now, will lose $840,000, and Latina women will lose over $1 million each over the course of their 40-year working career when compared with the national average for men's salaries. So what are the impacts of this gender pay gap? How does it impact you? How does it impact your family? Any question not from the same back corner, even though I love it? Any impacts? Yes?
Well, a lot of the time, from my research studies have shown that women are coming out with the same degrees, higher degrees than men, and earning higher test scores, and we're not being compensated for that in our salaries.
Right. So there's so many impacts for it. You aren't being compensated, but if you go back to those numbers that I shared, $480,000, $840,000, or $1.1 million, I know that I could think of a lot to do with that money. I'm certain all of you could think of a lot that you would want to do with that money, whether it's paying off college loans, investing in your retirement, whatever it may be. So that impact spirals. It doesn't just impact us, it impacts our families, it impacts our communities, and it impacts how we engage economically as well as socially with the world. So that's a quick mind framing of why negotiation matters, specifically in the gender wage gap. And I'd like to now turn to negotiation strategies, a quick course as to what this material is and how it can apply to you in your careers. What comes to mind when you think of negotiations? Not just salary negotiations, but negotiations in general. What comes to mind? Yes?
Dealing with personalities.
Personalities? Yeah?
Buying a car.
Yeah. And what feeling does that evoke for you?
Anxiety.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Fear.
Fear, right, all of these negative connotations. But I would offer to you that a negotiation is simply a conversation. And the more you can be informed, the more confidence you will have in going into that conversation and into that negotiation. So the first step in negotiating, salary negotiations or otherwise, is knowing your own value. The questions to ask yourself or spending time thinking about, what do you do well? What have you accomplished? What are the things that you enjoy doing? And this is quite separate from your resume. This is your own personal reflection, your own exercise as to who you are, what you have been doing, and what you want to be doing. The first step is being able to articulate your own value and not being afraid to talk about yourself and to share this with others. The second step, after you spend much time going through that exercise, is understanding what are your transferable skills. So from what you've said that you really enjoy doing or you want to be doing, how does that transfer into the jobs and the positions that you may be applying for? Can anyone think of an experience in their own life for how something that they have done that they value transfers into a hard career skill? Any examples or thoughts as to how this has played out for you? Yes?
Counseling and conflict mediation skills from either volunteer work or just personal, caregiving even,
Yes.
transfers very well into the workplace.
That's perfect. Exactly. And there's so many different layers. It's different for each one of us. And that's why it's so important to begin with knowing your own value, because no two of us are exactly the same. I have a twin sister and we are total opposites. So even that, you each are unique beings that have your own skill sets and your own value. It's important to identify that before you try to connect it into what are your transferable skills. And then the third piece is crafting your resume. How do you tie all of this together? It's important when you are applying for positions to be truthful, that's stating the obvious, but articulate your message in a way that frames these values and frames what you value of yourself and know that you have the confidence in doing. It's also important to consider the language that the organization has used. Depending on the company that you apply for, more and more large-scale companies, not as much in nonprofits, at least at the moment, more and more large-scale companies are using resume reader machines. So if you submit your resume and cover letter to a large corporation, they have a machine that scans every single word. And if there is not a percentage match between the two, no matter how qualified you are, your resume is kicked out of the system and you are not even given an interview. So while it's important to know your value and what are your transferable skills, it's also important to take a look at the language that the organization is using on their job descriptions, but also on their website. How do they talk about themselves? What matters to them? And how might you use some of that language to articulate your own value statement? So this is step one, building your confidence, both about yourself and how you represent yourself in paper. Step two is how do you do your research and benchmarking? So what do I mean by this? The market research is what you do to prepare for when you apply for jobs. Market research helps you understand what will a position be paid, what can I expect, and what am I looking for. This is very easy to do in the corporate world, not as easy to do in the nonprofit world. In the corporate world, you can use websites such as salary.com. It's a great resource. You go in, you put the city that you want to live in, the zip code, position title, and it kicks back averages and medians for that particular area. It's not as easy in the nonprofit world. And more, there is a move towards legislation to make salary positions transparent when you apply online, whether it's nonprofit or corporate. For instance, Massachusetts just passed a law, July 1 last year it became active, that every job posting that's available in Massachusetts has to have the salary parameter range listed. So that goes towards eliminating any type of gender equity or challenges. But the first step is benchmarking. Another website that I used quite a bit when I lived in Boston was called Third Sector New England. So they were trying to do the same thing that salary.com is doing, just for the nonprofit sector or the third sector, in doing comparisons of what salary jobs are, or position titles and compensation ranges are for nonprofit organizations. This becomes more challenging when you are a contract worker, whether you're taking gigs, doing independent consulting. There's no one benchmark for doing this. But I encourage the students that I worked with and the other colleagues who have taken this program to start to develop relationships with others and have honest conversations about what those compensations were for those gigs or for the contracts that they were taking, just to see, are there any discrepancies? Step two is building a budget for yourself. I hope you all have done this. If you haven't, please do. You need to understand what's coming in and what's going out. There's two resources that I have to offer. One is called paycheckcity.com. It's a free resource to you. And I wish I would have had this before my first job, because I took it, I moved down to Houston so excited to get a salary and got my first paycheck, and I called home and I said, what is FICA and why do they take so much out of my paycheck? So I hadn't anticipated taxes, but paycheckcity.com will help you understand what is being taken out based on the city and the state that you live in. The other, if you have not built a budget before, you can do this on a spreadsheet. I love Excel, but this website and program is called You Need a Budget, and it takes all of my Excel skills and takes it to a new level. It'll help you understand the goals that you have for yourself in financially planning and how that becomes a reality with the income that you are earning currently. And I'm not getting paid to say any of this. I've just used the program for 10 years. That's how much I love it. I wanted to share it to you. The third step in research and benchmarking is then identifying your target salary, your salary range. So you take the information from that first piece, the benchmarking that you did. You take the information from your current budget, and then you figure out what is realistic and how will I make this match happen. You're building your knowledge. And the third piece in this 20-minute tips and tricks, which we are almost done, is to practice. You need to understand your environment that you are walking into. Is it a new position or are you asking for a raise? You know, those have totally different strategies associated with them. How do you create your plan? You know, what is a priority for you to understand? What is a priority for you in walking into a new position or accepting a contract gig with someone? It's important to you to understand what that value is, and it is your choice to say yes or no at the end of the day. All of this helps you to build your knowledge and understand, how do I best make this decision? And then I would encourage all of you to role play. Practice a negotiation before you are actually in that environment. Practice it both on behalf of the person that's getting hired, but then practice it on behalf of the one that's doing the hiring. This helps you to anticipate the questions that you may be receiving and help you better plan what is your strategy for how you can do this. And if anyone ever needs a practice partner, please call me. I love doing this. I love making it harder for you than it will actually be in real life. So far, I've held true to that. But it's so important to practice in building your strategy. You can't just assume that you can walk in and feel comfortable. You need to practice saying these words, just like you need to practice before you get on stage at Eastman Theater. You can't just walk on and hope you'll do a good job. It's the same with any type of negotiation. So I'll quickly walk through these tools and resources. You need to know the laws in the city that you're working, city and state that you're working in. Like I said, Massachusetts has just passed a number of laws. It's illegal now to ask for the past salary history in Massachusetts. That's a factor that plays into women not advancing as quickly as men. You need to know your questions and know your priorities. So there's a lot that goes into each one of these. But knowing where to go for support, if you want to dig down further into any of the salary negotiation material, the AAUW website has just launched a salary negotiation training session you can take online for free. If you go to salary.aauw.org, you can have access to this material, take the training, and begin to dig deeper in developing these skills for yourself. And quickly, next steps in continued learning, you can go online, but there's also two more things happening here that I would, on campus, make you aware of. One is March 25th. It's not publicly announced yet, but will be soon. It's in process. I will be leading a full 2-hour salary negotiation workshop for students and alums. You need to RSVP. Registration is required for that because there will be food. There's dinner that will be happening. All of you on campus will be receiving an email about this within the next week or two at most. And then the second is I would encourage you all to look at the diversity conference that's happening on campus here. It's the 10th annual University of Rochester Diversity Conference. And I'm doing a short session, but there's a lot of great speakers and a lot of ways to get involved in what it means to build your own voice in any of these situations that you may be encountering. So that was a really quick, oh, yes, more resources. AAUW.org, the World Economic Forum, and the Lean In organization are 3 great resources online that are investing in the research to help everyone promote more gender and salary equity. So those are 3 online resources that I would recommend to all of you. And with that, we have a couple minutes left. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Yes?
Any advice? I think my biggest fear with this is, I'm going to graduate, and if I get a job, I'm going to be so thrilled to have a job. So how do you deal with the fear of, you want to negotiate so you do the best for yourself, but also there's this fear of, I don't want them to say, never mind, you're not worth it, we're going to go somewhere else.
Right. So I was in that same place, and I did not negotiate for my first job. I really wish I would have. At that point, when an employer has extended an offer to you, 99.9% of the time, it's not going to be revoked. I have heard of instances where women have experienced that, women and men. But the organization has invested so much time and so much money in finding the right candidate that they won't automatically or shouldn't automatically revoke that offer. For them, if they did, what's the value of offering it to you and their top candidate, right? The other piece is that if you said no, it would cost the organization even more time and more money and lost productivity in whatever that role is, because that position still would not be filled. That's not to say that you need to negotiate within reason and understanding what those parameters are and all of these tips that were shared, but it's almost expected that with any role, there will be some type of negotiation. I think the other piece that I'll quickly add to that is that it's important to consider what are the benefits that are being offered, because a total compensation package is not just the salary that you receive, but it could be healthcare, it could be vacation, it could be a flexible work time, it could be so many other different things. And that doesn't have a hard value to the money that you see every week, every other week that you bring home, but it adds value to your life. So it's important when evaluating any offer to ask for what is the total compensation package and understand that as well. Other questions? Okay, great. I think that's right about 20 minutes, yeah? Fantastic. Thank you for being here today.